Welcome to Speaking Holistically, the podcast that explores the power of alternative medicine, natural healing, and homeopathic solutions to help you achieve true wellness. Each week, Dr. Jen and Amy G dive into the world of holistic health, discussing researched, time-tested remedies with expert insights from Dr. Jen, as well as real-life stories from patients to empower you to take charge of your health. So if you're ready to embrace a more natural path to wellness, let's start speaking holistically, because true healing begins from within. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Speaking Holistically. I'm your co-host, Amy G. I'm here with the amazing Dr. Jen, my co-host, and we are doing a Family Health Hub episode, and it's about the Chinese Meridian Clock.
Yep. It sure is. So there is basically an easy clock. You can look it up. We're going to pop it up on the screen here, I think, in a second.
Yeah, while you're talking, I'm going to pull it up.
And that way it'll make it easier for the listeners and viewers to take a look at it. And if you're listening in the car, look at it later, but it's going to be really important. So there's some people that will tell me like, oh, I'm waking up between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And that is an easy liver. That's a liver issue for sure. So then we know that we need to support the liver. So this is another way that you can kind of figure out what's happening with your body. And basically this is based on Chinese medicine. And every 2 hours, the body cycles through to another organ, and that organ is functioning at its highest rate. So it's almost like, I don't know, I kind of equate it to like a backwash cycle for something at the house, you know, that sort of a thing. So it's functioning at the highest rate. But the one opposite of that is functioning at its lowest rate. It's interesting if people have symptoms at the same time of day, or they eat lunch at 12:30 and then they start getting sick at 2 p.m., then we can kind of figure out what's happening. The clock that's up on there on the screen will kind of give you an idea. So if we look at one, like I mentioned earlier, 1 to 3 a.m. is liver. So this can impact your deep sleep. So people who are waking up between 1 and 3 a.m. may want to consider supporting their liver a little bit more. Now, the one thing that this clock doesn't have on the screen is there's also an emotional aspect to this as well. So we're going to kind of get a couple layers deep on this one.
Good. I'm looking forward to that.
So what happens is 1 to 3 a.m. is liver, but different organs literally hold on to different emotions. So liver tends to deal with anger, frustration, aggression, and irrationality. So you hear about people who drink too much potentially, and they're like, oh, they're an angry drunk. That's because their liver is being pushed past the point where they can handle it, and they probably stuff some emotions potentially from childhood, from adulthood, whatever the situation is. So the liver once again deals with anger, frustration, aggression, and irrationality. Now, if we back up a little bit, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. So let's say you get a big jolt of energy between 11 and 1, and you can't go to sleep until 1:30. We may be looking at the gallbladder there. The gallbladder also deals with resentment. Now, this isn't part of the Chinese clock, but I think it's an interesting fact. And that being that the gallbladder is most often removed from women who are 40 or older, usually past the point of childbearing age, and female. So there's 3 F's, and I hate to say this, but fat. So it's like, because there's the gallbladder, it can't handle and process the amount that's coming in. So it tends to store it in different places. So what we're taught in school is female, fat, and 40. And you don't have to be fat. There's plenty of people who get their gallbladder removed that are men, that are not fat, whatever the situation is, and not 40. I had a patient actually had her gallbladder removed at 19. Wow. So, yeah. So, but that tends to be an easy way to remember that. But it's interesting that the women over the age of 40, maybe you've been in a relationship for 25 years at this point with your husband, and there's some resentment there. So those are all things to look at, not just the physical aspect of how that organ is functioning, but also the emotional aspect of the things that are being held in. So, for example, Dana Reeves, Superman's wife, and a lot of people don't remember this, but she was diagnosed 12 years after her husband's accident, which rendered him a quadriplegic. She was diagnosed 12 years after that, I believe. Don't mark my words, but I'm pretty sure it's when it was, with lung cancer. And I remember the media going, that is crazy. She never smoked a day in her life. Like, how did she get lung cancer? Well, lungs store grief. So if she is so busy, and I'm not saying she was, I didn't personally know her. I'm not diagnosing her. I'm not doing any of this, but And just looking at it kind of realistically, you go from having a fully functional husband to suddenly becoming his caretaker. You're going to grieve all these different things, the loss of your actual husband, because he's no longer your husband. Yes, he's still the same person to a certain degree, but now you're feeding him, you're wiping his butt. He's not cuddling with you like he used to. He's not able to help take care of the kids or do all of the things he did as your husband. So we end up succumbing to certain issues because those emotions can technically manifest physical issues. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. So if you look at, since we're talking about lung, 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. is lung. So that's when the lungs are detoxing. So if you're waking up between 3 and 5 a.m. and people go, well, I just have to get up and pee during that time. I'm like, well, it would be interesting if you supported your lungs or dealt with the grief that maybe you don't even know you're not dealing with, and see if you still have to wake up between 3 and 5 a.m. So this is a really good tool for people to have, because they can kind of look at things and say they start getting intestinal cramps at 2:30 every single day. And you can see there that it's small intestines, and that's the small intestines absorb nutrients. That's where nutrient absorption occurs. So let's say your energy gets really low, you need a nap. That would be something that you may want to take a look at and see if you need to support that. The emotion that's involved in small intestines is lost and vulnerability. So being lost and vulnerable. So let's say you're in a relationship, or you're struggling with one of your kids and the choices that they're making, or you're not sure what your position is going to be with the restructuring of an organization like the company that you're working for. So, you think of all these little things that could be happening in your world, and that definitely can impact the physicality and how these organs are processing energetically, or their chi, if you will, when we're looking at Eastern medicine.
This is fascinating. I have seen this clock over the years because you've showed it to me. And I think this is really important for people to understand. A lot of people probably don't know that the body is cycling through different functions and different organs all day and all night. And so this is such a great educational tool. And I want to encourage everybody to screenshot this if you're watching it, and keep it on your phone. It'll help you and your family identify maybe where your body needs some extra support to help it function optimally. And the interesting thing, you mentioned Christopher Reeve's wife. I use that example all the time to tell people about lungs and the lungs storing grief. I use that specific example. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that story in particular.
Well, I think it's really poignant, because at the time that she was diagnosed and the media caught wind of it, I was sitting actually at a friend's house who was a nurse, and I told her, I said, well, that's horrible that she's going to pass away from this. And she looked at me just shocked, and she said, how can you be so callous? And I said, no, it has nothing to do with being callous. There's not enough chemotherapy in the world that's going to take care of grief that was stuffed for 12 years. And there could have been a genetic factor to it. Like I said, I don't know her. I didn't know her. I don't know her history. I don't know any of this stuff. But just looking at it from outside and seeing that there's a potential from this, it definitely can, it clocked. Not to be, no puns intended.
And then the inside, I do have a question about the inside. When it says fire, water, wood, metal, earth?
So those are the 5 elements. And so that goes deeper into Chinese medicine, which I don't really want to get into today. And it doesn't really impact most people, but like we interviewed Lauren, she might have a little bit more information on that, but basically paying attention to those time frames, it'll help harness the certain energy. And if you're having liver issues, then maybe take liver support at 1 a.m. when you wake up, and it might cause you to go back to sleep because you're supporting it at that time frame. But just using and paying attention to your body's natural rhythms for the time of day is super important.
Absolutely.
So with the stomach, and I know we took the clock off of the screen, but with the stomach, that's oversympathetic. So there's a lot of people who have concerns for their family or friends, and they will end up with stomach issues. I mean, how many little kids have stomach issues because of their parents fighting or going through a divorce, or something happening in the classroom? So that comes up with oversympathetic. So, and what that means is that you're basically pulling on somebody else's emotions to protect them from it. And there's a lot of people who are empaths that don't know they're empaths, or don't even know what that word means, but they can feel other people's emotions, or they can feel other people's I don't know, reactions. I'm not really sure exactly how you want to say it, but that can make a huge, huge difference with that too. So if your kid is having constant stomach problems and you've taken them to all these doctors and done all these things, like maybe start looking at the emotional aspect and how much they're actually taking on to themselves that you didn't ask them to do, but they feel like they need to take that on, and not just kids, but adults do it all the time as well. Kidneys tend to be fear. Bladder is paralyzed will. So something you maybe want to do, but you're not doing it. But the kidneys, that's a big one because there's a lot of people with kidney issues that are fearful of a lot of things in the world, or they grew up in being afraid as a child as well. So that can impact our kidneys. So everything is connected.
Yeah, yeah, I find this so fascinating, and I've learned a lot from you about this over the years and the different health issues, and my liver has needed support in the past, and I don't even drink alcohol, so that's, and I say that only because you can't tie it back to, I'm not taking medications, right? I don't take medications and I don't drink, so it's not processing anything except whole food supplements and, clean food and things like that. So it needs support for other reasons sometimes. And that's something you've been able to pinpoint with me, different parts of my body over the years. And I think this is just such a great, helpful tool for people. And I don't even know that they would connect, their stomach issues to what's going on in their lives.
Well, and we're so multifaceted, but our medical system tends to look at everything very one-dimensional, really. And it's, we're more than the sum of our parts. So, if we have a liver issue, is it because we excessively drink or take pharmaceuticals that are destroying our liver? No, not necessarily. But, is it the constant exposure to the chemicals that are in your wood floor that you didn't even know were there, didn't even think about it? Is it the constant exposure to, your perfumes or your laundry detergent or your makeup or all of the above, or your commute is 2 hours a day and you're breathing in exhaust on the interstate 2 hours each direction, you're breathing that in, and now your lungs and your liver and your kidneys are probably going to be involved in that. So, just trying to think outside the box and figure out, okay, where is this coming from? And, don't forget that emotional aspect, because that can show up when you least expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this was really helpful. And I was thinking, I know I put that up on the screen for those listening on Spotify. Just remember, if you are part of our school community, like things like that, like I will put that calendar up. You'll see that in the school community, so you can find it there. So if you are listening, you can get it there as a resource also. But if you're watching, just back the screen up and screenshot that. Just seriously, just put it on your phone. Everybody put it on your phone. So that when you do wake up in the middle of the night, you can pinpoint exactly what,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it just is one more tool to try to unravel the mystery of our bodies, right? So
Yeah. Our bodies are complex.
Yep.
They're complex.
More complex than we even expected. I mean, every time we come up with something, I mean, even, how many times were we told that the appendix is just a vestigial organ? It's not necessary. And I'm like, well, then why would it be there if it's not necessary? And now they're finding it's actually like a storage unit for every bacteria and virus and stuff that we've ever come in contact with. So it's like our body knows what to do with it. It's actually part of our immune system. Every time we turn around, there's more stuff being discovered. When my parents were born, they were born before 1950, and they didn't know until 1950 that there was an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. And,
Wow.
you just think that is like, well, we've always done that, of course, and it's like, no, we didn't. Like when my parents were born, they had no idea what made a boy or what made a girl. They had no idea those genetics. In the last, 75 80 years, we've come quite a distance, and we still have quite a ways to go to understanding what's happening with the body.
That is why I appreciate so much that you crave knowledge as much as you do, and you're constantly continuing your own education to stay up on everything, because it's just not every doctor does that. So personally, I want to thank you for that, because it means that we get the latest and greatest knowledge about our bodies and what's available to us.
Well, Oh boy. No, I do a lot of reading. I always have. I find things very, very interesting. And, I'll hear something and deep dive into that. And I absolutely encourage people to read PubMed. Go onto pubmed.com and search for things. And if you're not finding the right exact words, like we talked about with the HPV vaccine, you can look up Gardasil and ovarian failure. But if you look up HPV vaccine and infertility, it's not necessarily going to show up. So you have to kind of have different words and some specifics. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there was a Harvard study that I looked up about nicotine and how it's not addictive. And I'm like, wait, we've been told our whole lives that nicotine's addictive. So that's for another episode for sure. But PubMed is a great, great, great resource to get actual information that's peer reviewed and published.
Yeah, definitely. I encourage all of our listeners to check that out. Well, thank you, Dr. Jen. This was a great episode. Very, again, eye-opening. For a lot of people, this is going to be probably pretty surprising, but also such a helpful tool. So thanks, everybody, for listening. If you have not joined our school community, I'll put the link in the show notes below. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. That wraps up another episode of Speaking Holistically. Thank you for listening. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration to take charge of your health. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, be sure and join the Speaking Holistically school community by clicking the link in the show notes. There, you'll get access to daily podcast episodes, weekly live Q&As, educational content, and so much more. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, be well, stay curious, and keep speaking holistically.